guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new IDontWorkHereLady content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled I Forgot That I Don't Work Here. A few years ago I used to work at a large grocery store in my hometown. I worked there for about a year before I had to quit due to a very abusive manager, but overall I enjoyed the experience. I was a clerk and cashier whose job varied between customer service, cleaning, and general busywork around the building. Not long before Christmas last year I had a really bad bout of insomnia and I hadn't slept in about 36 hours, but I had to go to the store to buy some groceries for the week. I go to the store and I start looking around for what I need, but I am very, very tired and can hardly remember what I am looking for. I noticed that a woman was looking confused between her list and the shelves, and I politely asked her if she needed help with anything. I directed her to the product she needed in another aisle, and I also got it off of the shelf for her as she was quite short. I then helped another lady get something off of a high shelf, and at that point I sort of dazed out and I forgot that I didn't work there anymore. I proceeded to spend the next 3 hours doing my old job. I would help customers find things, I grabbed a broom and swept half the aisles, and I even did about a half-dozen cart runs to bring in shopping carts which, due to the snow, were thrown haphazardly around the lot wherever the customers were when they got done with them. Eventually I started bagging groceries for customers at one of the registers when the cashier, a newer person who did not work there when I did, noticed I was not wearing a uniform and bluntly asked me what the duck I was doing, and I really didn't have an answer for that. Eventually I just said to her, "Oh, right, I don't work here." The next story is titled Forced a Gas Agency to Change Their Telephone Directory. No. This happened many years back. Living in a developing country, we don't have gas connections for our stoves, so have to rely on a pretty reliable network of gas agencies which supply cylinders. And this was long enough back when mobile phones did not exist, was not widely prevalent, so telephone directories were still a thing. For the uninitiated, telephone directories are books containing all the names and phone numbers of the people living in the immediate vicinity. Our local gas agency was on the directory and so was my home no. The problem was, the agency's no and mine were switched, so, a person calling them after looking up the DIR would call our home. And 14-year-old me would have to explain the mix-up and give them the actual no. This carried on for months. I had called the agency and asked them to get the no corrected, but to no avail. Keep in mind this was a busy agency and my home phone would ring sometimes many times a day, followed by me explaining. After a couple more months of this going on, I got fed up and decided to start working at the agency. So, agency calls don't have much convo and go like this. Customer. Hello. K3478, customer no, agency. Okay, we'll send. Delivery number 7634, works like an OTP. Following are the actual, translated to English, conversations that happened in the months that followed. Customer 1. Hello, L5285 me. Okay, your no is 8264. Customer 2. Hello M8364 me. Okay. Your no is 1234, we will deliver today itself. After a couple of months of me diligently doing this, the directory got corrected with their updated phone no. The next story is titled Didn't Know Enough About Power Tools. A few years back I was at a big hardware chain store buying a power tool. I'm an electrician and I'm dressed like it. Now, employees in this place wear high-vis yellow, but so do a good portion of those coming in to buy stuff, like me. I'm undecided on the make of tool I want, so I'm reading up on the differences between a few, and an older guy next to me asks a question about his choice. Guy, are the blades for this compatible with the Ryobi ones? Me, just thinking he thinks I might know, don't know. What does the packaging say? It should have a list of blade codes it uses. Guy, what code am I looking for? Me, no idea, mate, back to browsing. Guy, that's not good enough. Me, still looking down at what I'm doing, replied jokingly, yeah. I've failed you. Guy, raising his voice. Well, why don't you find out? I look up and scowl. What? Piss off. Find it yourself. Guy throws the tool onto the shelf and storms off. I think, what a tool, and go back to what I'm doing. A few minutes later I hear a voice a few meters away. Store manager, he doesn't work here. That's a customer. I look up and Guy is standing all puffed up with a manager in tow, and I immediately realize that he thought I worked there and was trying to get me in trouble. I've worked in retail in my younger days and still carry some residual resentment toward customers, so my response just came out automatically. I looked at him and in the most disdainful soft tone just said dickhead and went back to browsing. The reaction from the two of them was quick but satisfying. The manager is pushing down a grin, the old guy deflates and looks utterly mortified. I'd feel bad, but the staff in those places aren't paid enough to have to deal with people getting them in trouble. The job sucks. Don't make it suck more. The next story is entitled Idiot Neighbor Wants to Start Parking in My Private Driveway. Okay, so this conversation with the neighbor took place a couple of weeks ago and I was floored afterwards. We live on a pretty quiet street and we are the last house at the very end of the cul-de-sac. While quiet, I wouldn't call our street particularly nice. Decent blue-collar neighborhood with 50s-era houses and tiny little yards. Most the houses have one skinny driveway that only fits one car comfortably. Two cars if the first pulls up close to the house and the second sticks out in the street a bit. As a result of this, most people also park along the street wherever they can squeeze in. Each house usually gets 1 or 2 additional spots this way. This is not the case for our house, since we are at end of the cul-de-sac. If we parked a vehicle out front, it would block our neighbors' driveways on 2 sides. This was a big consideration for us when purchasing our house because having any guests over would create a parking challenge. One of the reasons there is no other street parking anywhere near us is because one of the neighbors on the other side of the cul-de-sac uses all the free spaces. Enter into the story our entitled family, EF. Basically they've lived there since the dawn of time. I don't want to give too many identifying details, but it's a case of multiple generations living in one tiny house cause no one can afford to move out. At some point years ago the garage was converted to living space and the driveway was absorbed into the yard. Because they have no driveway of any kind and because there are so many people living there, there are always 6 cars parked vertically in the cul-de-sac. As a result, all vehicles turning around on the street have to do a very tight 3-point turn and no one else is allowed to park there. They'll ask you to move. I checked the county records and despite their claims they don't own that damn corner of the cul-de-sac and certainly don't have exclusive rights to all those spots. This is where the entitled idiot comes in. I don't know most of the folks from EF very well, but I actually hung out with entitled idiot from time to time. But since she was a fair bit younger than me and always wanted rides, money, and weed when she came around, I basically stopped spending any time with her. On this particular day she caught me outside as I was getting into my car. She quickly begins to tell me that she had gotten a job the month before and was thinking about buying herself a car. Only trouble is there's nowhere left to park at her house. So she wants to know if she could park in our driveway every day instead. Like at the time we have 2 cars and 2 spots. Technically you can park 3, maybe 4 cars in our driveway, but that's only because we paid to widen our driveway a bit when we first moved in, so we could actually have a guest or 2 sometimes. We had to do this because EF was taking all the street parking and now entitled idiot wanted to take my private driveway too. I'm usually a huge pushover but I was pretty floored she was asking this. I fumbled for the right words and I hate saying no to people but got up the courage and straight up told her no, it wasn't going to happen. I said we had issues with parking as it was and she should have to figure something else out. She seemed really surprised by this answer, and I could tell she was annoyed with me for saying no. She mentioned she was going to ask another neighbor of ours next then if she could park in their driveway instead. She did end up getting her new car, but unsurprisingly, I never saw her parked in the other neighbor's driveway either. Instead she must have talked a family member into getting rid of one of their old cars. I wouldn't know because she unfriended me on Facebook directly after our conversation. I had a good laugh at that. At least I won't get any more DMs asking for money and weed. The next story is titled The Wrong Suit. My wife reminded me of this incident today after breaking out laughing as we walked past the store, so I thought I would share before it faded into my memories once again. Background setting. When I was preparing to leave the military, there is a store that rhymes with Stacy's that was conducting a hiring program seeking to bring experienced officers into their corporate family as various types of managers. The program wound up getting cancelled, but before it did I was on a short list of 5 at the top for selection. As part of it I spent a couple days at one of their stores looking over how things ran in order to present a proposal to improve operations, a required part of the process. They actually wound up implementing mine even though the program was cancelled and I was not hired, which led to a personal dislike of the franchise as they basically stole my work with no credit given. Now, once out of the military, I enjoyed being able to dress as I like, no uniform, and I would commonly go out in nice shoes, slacks, a button-up shirt with undershirt, a tie, and depending upon the weather, a jacket or blazer. A couple years after getting out of the army and after the program was cancelled, my wife wanted to price check some things she was looking to buy, so while she was tending to business I went wandering and browsing the store on my own. Now, former law enforcement gone military where I spent 17 years and had 3 deployments, I picked up a tail after just a couple minutes and quickly noticed her. She kept her distance as I meandered the shelves and after a few more minutes was joined by another employee and then the assistant manager, whom I had met a couple years prior during the program. After a couple more minutes of browsing with them keeping a polite distance, I stopped and turned back to look at them and the assistant manager, AM, stepped up, offer her hand, which I shook. AM, it's so good to see you again. We were not expecting you until next week, but all the files are ready if you want to start the reviews early. Me, I'm sorry, I think you have me confused for someone else. I didn't get hired by Stacy's. AM, suddenly looking embarrassed. You're not the accounts inspector? Me, no ma'am. Just a bored husband wandering the aisles while my wife does some price comparisons. AM, I'm so sorry. Please, enjoy. And off she went. I could hear her fussing at the original lady who started following me, but was doing my best to bite my tongue and not bust out laughing. I found my wife, told her what happened, and she nearly pissed herself laughing until able to tell me there were better prices elsewhere and that we should go. The next story is titled Homophobia Doesn't Pay the Bills. Decades ago, I was fresh out of the military, and fresh out of the closet. I had landed a great first job as a software developer with a very small company. Nobody knew about my private life at work, because well, it's private. The office admin developed a crush on me, and I told her that I was gay and had a boyfriend. She thought it was a terribly funny joke on her that she didn't pick up on me being gay. So, she told it as a story on herself around the office. Our VP was a homophobic woman. Basically, she didn't like anybody who wasn't white, male, right-wing and Christian. Since the office gossip was she was sleeping with the owner, and both were married to other people, her version of Christianity had a few loopholes in it. I had spent most of the day helping a sales guy set up a database on his computer to track customers. Yeah, DBase 3. Totally easy to write an app over the phone. She calls me into her office at 5 p.m., tells me there's gossip about me and that she can't have me working there anymore. My team was furious with her. We were a tight development team and this really blew up quickly. I quietly said goodbye, packed up my stuff and drove home to tell my boyfriend I was unemployed for the first time in my life. I started a contract job that paid twice what I had been making. After 2 months, my former VP calls me and asks if I would work on the software project freelance. She offered my former rate, to which I said no. I told her $50 an hour, which was like 5 times my salary. She said no. A week later she calls back and says we really need you on this. I asked her, are you saying you can't finish this without me? Yes, she replied. I said you should have thought of that before you fired me for being gay. Within a month, the whole software project was shut down. But, my former teammates started their own company and contracted the work from her at 5 times their previous salary. Her bigotry cost her inexpensive and reliable employees, rattled the entire office at the budget hit and made her look like a fool. The next story is titled She Meant Well. I'm not 100% sure this fits here, and this isn't a story about me, but rather my mother. I just recently remembered this story and thought it might give someone a chuckle. The story takes place about a decade ago in an extremely Hispanic mall. My mother is a Mexican woman with black hair and caramel-like skin. My stepdad is a white man with blue eyes and brown hair. Funny enough, my half-brother came out looking just like his father. My mother was in her mid-20s at this Hispanic mall with my younger brother in a stroller window shopping. Suddenly a Hispanic woman in her mid-40s came up to my mother and said, "Hi, I used to be a nanny for many years. I just wanted to give you some advice. As a nanny, you need to be extremely gentle and careful with white people's children. The parents can be really sensitive, and sometimes plain out stupid." My mother, while attempting to process what this well-meaning woman had said, simply said thanks, smiled, and kept going about her day. The next story is titled That One Time Someone Thought I Worked in Retail While I Was Covered in Flour. Over the summer of 2021, I worked at a pizzeria on the beach. Next door was a clothing store. I was very close with the owner of said store and often spent my breaks there. Their air conditioning was unimpeded by the heat from the ovens and fryers. Now keep in mind, I was constantly covered in batter and flour and sauce, as well as wearing a shirt with the pizzeria name and logo on it. But every time I was in that store, I was always asked how much something was or where something was. Once I explained to them I didn't actually work there, they were very understanding. But eventually I spent enough time in the store to learn how much everything was and where everything was located, so I ended up just telling them. They were very confused when I was unable to ring them up. The next story is titled I Was the Karen. This happened when I went for a holiday and was sitting in a pub with friends and I was a bit tipsy. I had called my friend who lived in the city to meet up. Now just so you know, this guy thinks he is the coolest guy in the world and stuff, and was wearing sunglasses in cloudy weather when he arrived. He was sitting the chair leaning back in SHT. This description is just so you know that this guy typical self-proclaimed confident and chill guy. Coming to point, I went in to get drinks for us, but he said he didn't want any, so I only got drinks for the rest of us. We were also eating fries, we were still drinking, and I again asked if he was sure he wasn't going to get anything. He says no, but I'll have water, and proceeded to call the person standing at the door. But he wasn't loud enough, so he asked to call him, and me being drunk at this point screamed as loud as I could, "Excuse me," and called him to our table, which I agree was embarrassing. My friends yelled at me saying that was wrong. When he came over and this other friend asked for water, that guy said he didn't work at the pub but worked for the security company. I turned red with embarrassment and apologized for screaming. All the time we were there I felt sorry for embarrassing him as well, so when we were leaving I went up to him and apologized once again for my actions. He was being nice and said it was okay, SHT happens. My friends still tease me about it. The next story is titled You Don't Work Here? Neither do I. It's been 10 years since I last did retail, though I spent a decent chunk of the prior 25 years in it. I'm used to being mistaken for an employee. My reactions generally reflect their actions. Polite request equals polite response and rude equals rude. Hardly anyone I have ever encountered persisted to the reporting you to supervisor part. But Monday I was at the Target in the next town over. I hadn't tidied anything while shopping. I tend to fold unfolded shirts out of habit when I am browsing women's clothing. Understandably, people see this and think employee. I cut them some slack. I was wearing business casual in burgundy slacks, black top and heels, looking absolutely nothing like a Target employee. I'm standing in the feminine hygiene aisle, marveling at all the ways pads and tampons have just exploded in variety over the past few decades, and contemplating my various options in a humorous series of texts to my husband. Oblivious to the world around me, as usual. Suddenly my upper arm is grabbed hard, and this lady, about my age, 51, says, "I've been trying to get your attention for a while now. Put down your phone and help me. I can't find the cat food." Grabbing me is not allowed, so my response begins with yanking my arm away and saying, "Touch me again and your ass'll be on the ground, got it? I don't work here, go find someone else." She continues to demand my help. I insist I don't work here. She insists I do, and finally I just turn and walk away. And she shouts after me, "I'd expect this from some kid, but you are old enough to know better. I'm going to find your manager." And snap went something in my mind. I whirl around, stalk over to her, wag my finger in her face and demand she go back in the back and get me the larger sized tub of KY jelly. There is none out here and I need it now. I find bringing sex into a conversation makes people pay attention to what I am saying. She looks shocked and appalled as I say, "And where are the Magnum condoms? Go find me those and the KY jelly." She tells me not to play games with her, she knows I work here and she's going to get me fired. And I just grin and say something I've always wanted to. "I know the owner. I'm going to get you and your manager fired if you don't find me my KY jelly." She shouts that she doesn't work here, and I look her in the eye and state calmly, "Neither do I," and stare until she looks away and starts heading down the aisle. Not sure what the pharmacy techs thought about two middle-aged ladies, standing in the middle of the feminine hygiene aisle of Target, shouting about KY jelly and threatening to have one another fired from a place neither of them worked, but I hope they found it as entertaining as I did. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comments.